said when they're done talking.
Hello. Do you have a good view from here? Or
Maybe I'll from here.
yeah, and Amelia,
I'll be okay. Thank you.
there you go. Is that okay? Otherwise, next to Chris and Diane, just be careful with the. Is this working? Yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah. You're welcome. Careful, 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 careful. Hello. You're welcome. Here, if you read. No? Well, good evening and welcome to the Co-Cathedral of St. John the Evangelist. I'm delighted to see you all here for our third reflections on Advent and Christmas through art. Please remember to use the microphone to share your impressions, thoughts, reflections, and questions with us. Tonight, Amelia will help us, and then afterward, Amelia has to leave later on, and then Sam will help with the microphone. Today, December the 12th, is the feast day of Our Lady of Guadalupe. The gospel reading we heard at Mass was from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 1, verses 26 to 38, proclaiming the visit of the angel Gabriel to the Virgin Mary, inviting her to become the mother of Jesus Christ. The Annunciation marks the incarnation, meaning God becoming human in the form of Jesus Christ through the Holy Spirit. We hear Luke's Annunciation 3 times during Advent. It is fitting that our first work of art of this evening is the Annunciation, created between 1849 and 1850 by Dante Gabriel Rossetti. Rossetti was one of the founding members of the pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood. The Brotherhood challenged the decadent indulgences of the day by looking for inspiration and religious guidance from medieval art. The Annunciation in Luke's Gospel is followed by Mary's departure in haste to visit her cousin Elizabeth, who is pregnant with a son, the future John the Baptist. Hence, our second painting is The Visitation, painted in 1614 by the renowned Dutch artist Rembrandt. Our last, more modern painting of this evening depicts the parable of the lost sheep. The painting, The Lost Sheep, was created by the British painter and draftsman Alfred Usher Seward. The work was exhibited for the first time at the Royal Academy in London in 1898. As it's usual, for a few minutes at the beginning of each reflection session, I introduce a general topic of artistic or artistic historical interest. This evening's choice is an easy and compelling one. I will present photographs and a short video of the phoenix-like rise from the ashes of the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris after major destruction by fire in 2019. The original construction of Notre Dame Cathedral, referred to as Notre Dame de Paris, Our Lady of Paris, or simply Notre Dame, began in 1163 in the reign of King Louis VII. It stands on the eastern half of the Ile de la Cité, an island on the Seine River in the center of Paris. It took 182 years until 1345 to complete the cathedral, with continuous modifications over subsequent centuries. It is the most famous Gothic cathedral in the world. Notre Dame has borne witness to and withstood countless historical events, including wars and revolutions. It is considered an integral part of the soul of France. On April 15, 2019, at 6:50, a catastrophic fire engulfed Notre Dame, causing extensive damage to the building, including the collapse of the central spire at 7:53 p.m. and the roof just a short time later. And here's an image of the burning and collapsing spire and the roof. The fire destroyed 2/3 of the lead roof and the internal timber structure. The stone vaulted ceiling was severely damaged when the spire collapsed, tearing a hole through the transept vault and littering the central nave with rubble and debris. In the aftermath of the disaster, images from the inside of Notre Dame showed its immense walls standing sturdily, with statues still in place in its gleaming golden cross above the altar. However, the floor was covered with charred rubble from the falling roof. And it's quite amazing. These were still up. Entire sections of the vaulting at the top of the structure had collapsed. And although the bell towers and most of the iconic circular stained glass windows remained intact, the damage was devastating. The cause of the fire is still unknown. Most likely, it originated from electrical malfunction or a dropped cigarette from workers assembling scaffolding for an ongoing previous restoration. Thanks to the heroic efforts of the Paris firefighters, they created a wall of water that prevented the flames reaching the magnificent west facade, flanked by the famous two bell towers. The fire was under control by the early hours of April the 16th. Since this celebrated Catholic cathedral is a testament to French and to world history and faith, with a special place in the hearts of Parisians and visitors alike, the French President Emmanuel Macron vowed immediately that Notre Dame would be rebuilt and opened again to the public within 5 years. To his credit, regardless of one's political views, President Macron fulfilled his promise. In itself, it is close to a miracle that Notre Dame was officially opened just last week on Saturday, December the 7th, 2024, just 5.5 years after the fire. The estimated cost is $900 million, and to date, more than 340,000 donors from over 150 countries have matched the cost through generous donations. $75 million were contributed by 45,000 US donors. Approximately 2,000 craftsmen, including carpenters, glassmakers, stonemasons, and many others, helped to rebuild the cathedral. Although modern building techniques were used for the restoration, many 13th century traditional methods and materials were implemented. For completion of the wooden lattice structure supporting the new roof, 2,000 oak trees were found. And Brian just mentioned, and I had seen a little clip online, that there was a young man from Minnesota who was part of the team, who lived in France and helped to rebuild the wooden structure. This brief video gives us an overview of the magnificently restored stone surfaces, marble flooring, newly commissioned bronze altar, cleaned organ, and all the beauty of Notre Dame. That's okay, if we can get it. Okay. I also have three photos to look at a few details of Notre Dame in more detail. This first photo shows the new tabernacle, which was designed by French artist and designer Guillaume Badet. It is placed on the high altar in the rear of the nave, in front of the sculptures, including the Pietà and two sculptures of the kings, Louis XIII and Louis XIV. Miraculously, as so seen on the earlier pictures, these sculptures had not been destroyed by the collapsed roof. And the golden cross was still standing also after the fire. Fortunately, the three great glass rose windows survived the fire as well. They have undergone much needed restoration to repair smoke, lead damage, and a wear of tear incurred over many years of weathering. In this photo, we see the famous West Rose window above the entrance to Notre Dame. It is the oldest window, originally completed around 1225. None of the original glass, however, survives until today. The organ is located below the West Rose window. It is constructed of 8,000 organ pipes. The tallest of these pipes are an impressive 32 feet. And luckily, only one sustained water damage in the fire to contain the fire in 2019. When the organ was reinstalled, it had to be tuned and harmonized to the cathedral's specific acoustic environment, a very precise process that took about 6 months. This is the view of the new bronze central altar in the transept, which is proving somewhat controversial. The celebrant's chair, the side chairs, the main altar, the lectern, were all designed by the French artisan designer Guillaume Baudet, as he also had designed the tabernacle. He also designed the baptismal font. The Virgin and Child, also referred to the Virgin of Paris or the Virgin of the Pillar, is Notre Dame Cathedral's most emblematic object. It was surprisingly spared by the fire. The new lectern is located at the foot of the statue to show that the Virgin Mary is the first to hear the word of God. General Jean-Louis Georgelin had been appointed overseer of Notre Dame's reconstruction after the fire. He is credited with the huge success of the project, but tragically died in August 2023 while hiking in the Pyrenees before he could see the completion of the reconstruction. Philippe Villeneuve was the cathedral's chief architect for the rebuilding and reconstruction of Notre Dame. With this very brief overview of the devastating destruction and glorious restoration of the Notre Dame Cathedral, it is now time to reflect on our 3 works of art of this evening. Our first painting of this evening is The Annunciation by Dante Gabriel Rossetti, created in 1849 and 1850. And as I introduce the artist, you can follow along on the handout if that is helpful. Dante Gabriel Rossetti was born in May 1829 to Italian immigrants living in London. His father was a professor of Italian at King's College in the 1830s and a poet. His English-Italian mother was the daughter of an exiled noble Italian scholar who was also a private teacher. This rich literary and cultural environment had a strong influence on the young Rossetti. He came to love biblical passages, Shakespearean tragedies, Edgar Allan Poe, and the poetry of Browne. As a teenager, he was torn between the ambition to become a poet or a painter, and often claimed that his true passion lay with writing and poetry. In the mid-1840s, young Rossetti became acquainted with William Holman Hunt and John Everett Millais, young artists who, like Rossetti, were at odds with the Victorian art establishment. Together, Rossetti, Hunt, and Millais formed the initially secret Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood in 1848. Several other artists became loosely associated with the Brotherhood and its artistic style. The Brotherhood produced innovative, controversial, and impactful art, as well as secular works. The pictures of religious and medieval subjects strove to revive the deep religious feeling of 15th century Italian paintings. Although the Brotherhood's active life lasted not quite 5 years, its influence on painting and ultimately on decorative art and interior design in Britain was profound. Although Rossetti was a successful and admired artist, his personal life was overshadowed by the death of his wife, multiple affairs, mental health issues, and addiction. For the last 10 years of his life, he became housebound due to alcohol, psychosis, liver damage, and paralysis of his legs. He died on Easter Sunday, 1882, at the age of 53. As we consider our first work of art of the evening, I will quote from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 1, verses 30 and 31. The angel said to her, "Do not be afraid, Mary, for you have found favor with God. And now you will receive in your womb and bear a son. You will name him Jesus." And with my little introduction, I would like to invite you to comment on this painting. How would you describe the painting? Is there something that kind of draws you right in, something that jumps out to you, something you would like to comment on?
I think one of the lines of the scripture that you read, that Mary, do not be afraid. She looks like she's afraid. I mean, she's got her knees kind of drawn up to her and kind of towards the edge of what looks like a bed there. And the look on her face is very,
Yes. Yeah. So I think seeing an angel for the first time really takes you back a little bit, for sure. Someone else? How about our angel? Last week we spoke a little bit about angels, and I brought this painting in briefly. Any particular comments on Gabriel? Is he your typical angel you've seen on your Christmas cards? No. Yeah, so Rossetti chose to depict Gabriel without wings. And last week we talked about angels a little bit, and it has shifted through the centuries, interestingly. So in the 2nd century, angels did not have wings. Then the wings came into fashion a little bit, and now it seems Raphael, in particularly, he was Rossetti was particularly interested in art that was before the painter Raphael, so before the Renaissance. That might be some reason why he picked up on that. So he wanted to depict objects and figures in a more traditional way, if we can say so. I thought a really particular interesting aspect, however, he made Gabriel just be afloat, just a little bit over the ground, and he put kind of flames or lights on his heels. So I thought that was very interesting.
I'm just curious about what the writing is on the red post.
Uh-huh. Oh, thank you for coming to that. This?
Yes.
This? Yeah. So just a quick couple sentences. So this painting was Rossetti's second religious painting. He had, a year earlier, he had painted this painting, The Girlhood of Mary the Virgin. And it's a very traditional image as well, where we see the Virgin Mary with her mother, Saint Anne. And Saint Anne, usually it's depicted that Saint Anne will teach her to read the Bible, so she can read the Old Testament. In this one, Rossetti chose that St. Anne taught her daughter embroidery. And so if we look at what they're embroidering, it's the red cloth, and we see white lilies on here. And then they're using gold thread to embroider this into the red fabric. And we see that again, so he used the same kind of element in his pictures to kind of connect them with each other. But what it is, I'm Margaret. Do you have any idea what it could be? No? Sorry to call you out, but you're kind of a handy person. And so any it looks very slender. It seems to be on a bit of a stand.
Thank you for your introduction about the Notre Dame Cathedral. I just want to, before I comment on this, Olivier, I noticed in the news, was the lead organist played, and when we dedicated our organ, he came here to play our organ from Notre Dame. Yeah. So
Okay, nice.
yeah, and I saw his name in the paper and in the news that he was they had more than one organist. But so we were a little bit famous along with this introduction. What strikes me is, there's so many paintings. I'd be interested in that of the Annunciation. It seems that so many masters have attempted to capture.
Yeah, it's one of the most often depicted parts of the Bible, yes.
Wow, I didn't know that, but it makes sense because I have seen so many.
Yeah.
And they all have a very distinctive message, it seems to me. Mm-hmm. And what I experience here, afraid for sure, but more than that, really filled with some kind of, doubt, and I love that. Mm-hmm. Because she could have said no. And it brings, it seems to me, some consolation for our own faith journey when we're just not sure what God is asking of us, or we're not quite certain about the steps forward. And this is really consolation. Mary had the same challenge.
Yeah, thank you. I, to myself, think that so many times. For her, her life was a little bit leaning that way, but still, it's a big ask. And to say yes, it's just phenomenal for her to take that step forward and to trust. I agree.
Do you have any comments about the lilies? I would think that those are usually associated with Saint Joseph. Is that correct?
Yeah. So the lilies actually play many roles through Christianity. The lily is one of the many. So even though this is kind of a modern take of the Annunciation, however, Rossetti implemented many of the traditional symbols in his painting. One of the symbol is the lily. So if we look at many of the Annunciation paintings, the lily will reoccur again and again. It is a sign for purity, for virginity. So that's really why it is presented to her, because it's the Virgin Mary. The lily again comes back during the resurrection. During Easter, we buy lilies, and it's that trumpet shape to announce the resurrection of Jesus Christ. With Joseph, I'm not so sure the association with Joseph and the lily, I have to say.
I've just seen art or statues with Saint Joseph and lilies, and so it might also be his perpetual vow of virginity, perhaps, that they're talking about.
I know that our statue, Joseph has a lily between his feet. And I just remember, there's in the Old Testament, the story with they were holding their staffs. Yes, so it was he was holding his staff, and who was selected for the tribes of David, that staff blossomed into a lily. So yes, I think there's the connection with the lily. And then I think the tribe of David has a close connection to the lilies. Yes, thank you.
It looks like the embroidery that she was doing for her girlhood is finished, and so her girlhood has ended.
Oh, yeah, I like that interpretation. That's nice.
I don't know how many people have been using the Advent book that was given out with reflections, but it's really interested me as a OB nurse because there's a lot of emphasis on conception and the different meanings. It doesn't necessarily mean conception as we traditionally think of it, and even in that context, how there can be different emotions involved. But the beauty of the beginning of life in different situations, and working with mothers, this painting, she looks so young, and you can just see that look like, oh boy, what all does this mean? Which I think is such an honest reaction. But if anyone has a chance to grab one of those little books, I've used it for several years, but this year in particular, it's like, oh, it's really good.
Oh, thank you for pointing that out. Yeah. The gentleman in front.
Thanks. I just thought it was kind of interesting that all these questions just kind of made me think of the angels validating Mary's practice of chastity. And it's almost like it's pointing, right? The stem is pointing towards her womb. And then if you look at the folds of the gown, it's almost pointing towards that embroidery. And that embroidery looks like it has been a long practice, almost like an upside down lily itself.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That Mary's been practicing her embroidery for a long time because of the length of those little things coming up from it, the stems. So I don't know, I just think that the artist wants us to look at how he's connecting, her practice of her embroidery, which is of her virginity, as well as just all that is I don't know, it's cool.
Yeah, I was also drawn to the idea that it measures time in some way, that it could be like an old-fashioned, like a calendar counting down days that the individual horizontal bars might be count, and then it might be coming down and moving. Could it be?
You can see the embroidery frame in the other photo that you had. She's working at it, and it just folds down.
Oh, I see.
So that's
yes.
the embroidery frame, and she's completed it, and it's like she's been preparing for this and made the lily, and then he's presenting.
Oh yes, now I see that. You are entirely correct. Yes, it's the same. Yeah. It's the stand. It kind of folds up.
Folds it down, and she's.
Yes. Yes. So, So keeping track, and that's a one. That's perfect.
It looks like there's about 16 or 17 of those little stems, maybe symbolizing her age.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Just one of the classic symbols in the Annunciation is the lily, but it's also the dove, representing the Holy Spirit. And Rossetti also implemented that, or depicted that in his painting. And I think the overall color scheme is very limited. So we have lots of white. Again, white is the color of purity, chastity, virginity. So there's a lot of the white in here. And then, however, he did include a little bit of the blue. Again, the blue color is the color for Mary, our Queen of Heaven. And so I thought the positioning of the dove I thought was quite interesting too. It hovers in between heaven and earth, maybe, just because he placed it exactly half and half in front of the blue fabric, but then also in the back. So I thought that was maybe a little bit a sign that it kind of hovers between heaven and earth. And then yes, we spoke about this, and then it's also, I think, the connection, maybe preparing herself, but also the red color represents the passion of Christ. So again, maybe also looking forward into the future. Yes?
It's sort of, well, it's absolutely stunning that that red thing is right there in the middle. And if it really symbolizes her preparation for this whole event, it also, I think, symbolizes, just like you're saying, the passion and the blood at the end. There's blood through this whole thing. You know, she's going to have a baby with blood. She's going to lose her son with blood.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I think this is our, and I think, again, kind of coming back to the idea that she really said yes. I think that's just amazing, to really take on the saving role for all of us human on this earth. So I will leave this picture with the following question. Am I, as the Virgin Mary, embracing God's plan for my life, even if it will be challenging? So now it is time to move on to our second work of art of this evening. This beautiful nocturnal painting, The Visitation, was painted by the prominent Dutch artist Rembrandt in 1640. At the height of the Baroque movement in Northern Europe. And again, please follow along on the handout if that helps. Rembrandt van Rijn was born in 1606 in Leiden, Holland, where he received his initial artistic training. He also trained in Amsterdam, at the time the most prosperous port in Northern Europe. From these trading connections across Europe, Rembrandt was exposed to artworks from both the antiquity and more fashionable artistic styles from Italy and other sources through prints and reproductions. The dramatic use of light in Caravaggio's paintings was particularly influential on Rembrandt's work from the 1630s onwards. Rapidly, Rembrandt became highly regarded as a prolific painter, draftsman, and printmaker. His work ranged from portraits to biblical scenes. His famous self-portraits helped create an image of his life while demonstrating his humble and sincere nature. His biblical works reflected his religious education, while also providing a glimpse into his compassion for humanity. Despite never having left his home nation, Rembrandt's works became internationally recognized and celebrated. He was one of the leading artists in the Dutch Golden Age, a period of exceptional creativity, prosperity, military prowess, and scientific discovery that took place in Holland during the 17th century. Rembrandt's personal life was filled with much sadness and many difficulties. Although his wife Saskia gave birth to 4 children, only his son Titus survived into adulthood. Titus was still an infant when Saskia died at the age of 30. Rembrandt found himself repeatedly in financial troubles. Rembrandt's death occurred within a year of his son's death in October 1669. The great master died of a pauper and was interred in an unmarked grave. As you consider our second work of art of the evening, I will quote from Luke chapter 1, verses 41 and 42. And Elizabeth was filled with the Holy Spirit and exclaimed with a loud cry, "Blessed are you among women, and blessed is the fruit of your womb." And I invite you again to, what's your take on this painting? It's very different. It's almost we're going from light to dark. And I have a close-up, so we can see who the figures are a little bit better. Yeah. First, maybe just to point something out. This painting is quite small. It does sometimes surprise us, but I think particularly if I put it on a screen like that, we always might think of these paintings as rather large, but it's very small. So, and there's a lot of detail in that rather small frame. And also the painting has found its way into the Detroit Institute of Arts. It was very interesting, its provenance. It stayed in Europe for a long time, but then it came onto the American market, and then the Detroit Institute of Arts bought it in 1927 for its collection.
Can you enlarge it?
Mm-hmm. Oh, same.
It's a simple point, but the age and fragility of Elizabeth is really projected, as well as the youth of Mary. So I mean, it's just so distinctive. And Zechariah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, really wanting to be clear.
Yes. And again, it's interesting. We seem to come back to this particular age of the topic of the age and how artists choose to really either stick to the reality of the age differences. We looked at some paintings last week and in the first week between Mary and her mother, and also now between the Virgin Mary and Elizabeth. And again and again, if we would look at many of these works of art, you see differences. So some artists would choose to clearly distinguish the two women, and in other works of art, we would see them depicted very similar in age. So it's an interesting choice that the artist makes, how if they want to depict the difference in age. And Zacharias, yes, he's a very much an older gentleman, and leaning on a little boy to walk out of the house to greet. And I think this is a beautiful embrace between the Virgin Mary and Elizabeth, and then kind of the way Elizabeth looks into the Virgin Mary's eyes there.
Maybe I should have slept better last night, but when I'm looking at that right behind Mary's head, I think that's his arm, but it looks like a snake.
Oh, so I have a...
Clearly it's not.
No, let's see, I might... there. Anyway. So no, it's not. So there is a servant girl in the back, and she helps to take off Mary's cloak. I see what it's interesting the way he depicted it, but it's a young servant. Yes, here. So here are the hands of the girls as she lifts it off, and then here her other hand is down here, taking it off. Obviously, this asked for an explanation. So why is as a young black girl in the painting. If we think back, so this painting was created in the 17th century. The Dutch was a large sea nation, so they had colonies in Africa and in Asia, and they were one of the main trading countries for spices and other merchant goods. So Amsterdam actually had quite a large population of African people who would come to the Netherlands to do trades, and some came and were used or asked to be in a role of servants. Rembrandt was particularly well known for depicting black people in his paintings. He sometimes has them as servants, but he has, I think, 10 paintings and a lot of etchings where he really asked, because they were living in his neighborhood where he lived, to sit for him as models. And so kind of maybe the comment talking about colors, because we like to talk about colors, and we might wonder why we don't see blue in this painting. I think there's two particular reasons to it. This whole painting it's called a nocturnal scene, so we're in the dark. The only source of light in this painting is the moon shining right onto the main two figures. So it's all very dark. And we have seen that before. So Caravaggio, I mentioned in the introduction, had a great influence on the works of Rembrandt. So Caravaggio liked to place his figures in darkness and then have the dark background, which is called tenebrism, but he also liked to use the contrast of darkness and bright light on the figures, because that helps to create contrast and also three-dimensionality. Rembrandt used that method as well. He softened it. He kind of was most likely familiar with works of Caravaggio, and there were a number of Dutch artists who went to Italy and kind of brought back all the knowledge. They're called Caravaggistes. And so Rembrandt was familiar with it, but he made it his own style. He softened it much more. I mean, if we call back to our minds paintings by Caravaggio, they're kind of in your face, they're very brutal, the colors are very distinct, very sharp. Rembrandt is much softer. It's just in his color palette, the colors he uses in his paintings are kind of in the brown tones, and then just uses little highlights to bring things out. Coming back to the color, so because it's a nocturnal scene, blue, you wouldn't necessarily see blue, or even if someone would wear something blue in the moonlight, it would probably shift a little bit, so it wouldn't be quite as blue. And then also the color green is a symbol for prosperity and fertility. And then again, I think that goes along with the story, because the Virgin Mary is announcing to Elizabeth that she's pregnant with Jesus Christ. So we have in the center of the painting, we have the Virgin Mary and Elizabeth. We have the servant girl taking her cloak off. Joseph is coming up in the back. He's with the donkey. Here, I have him here. So there's a donkey, and Joseph, the Virgin Mary's husband, is coming up the stairs. Excuse me? And there's a dog, yeah. When we think of particularly Northern European artists like to paint dogs in their painting. I think that they wanted just to make it more relatable. So bring it into our lives. Again, we often think of paintings of something to look up to, and it's the story over there, but it's not. So it brings us into the story, because we are also asked to proclaim our faith and proclaim to others that we believe that Jesus Christ was born for us. So I think it's their way of making it accessible to everyone. Yeah, there you can see the dog. Maybe just one. There's a, sorry to jump back and forth a little bit. And down here he also included a peacock with its chicks. And peacocks are the symbol of immortality. Again, to kind of Jesus Christ, resurrection, life ever after. So it's a beautiful scene, and again, kind of if we think of the contrast with the earlier painting, we go from very bright white now to this beautiful nocturnal scene. And it is time to actually move on, so we have time for our third painting. And I will leave this painting now asking the following question. Do I actively share the message of Christ with others in my life? And now it's time to explore our third and last painting of the evening, The Lost Sheep, by the British painter Alfred Usher Seward from 1898. Alfred Usher Seward was born in Sunderland, a port town near Durham in northeast England, on September 1st, 1868. By his early 20s, he was living in Bushey, Hertfordshire, about 20 miles north of London, where he remained for the rest of his life. Very little is known about him. Seward was a British painter and draftsman of portraits, landscapes, and still lifes. Between 1893 and 1910, Seward was a regular contributor to the Royal Academy's exhibitions in London, the Fine Art Society in London, as well as the Royal Birmingham Society of Artists, Glasgow Institute of the Fine Arts, the Walker Gallery in Liverpool, and the Paris Salon. His most well-known painting, The Lost Sheep, was exhibited at the Royal Academy in 1898. Seward died on August 9, 1915 in Bushey. And as you consider our last work of art of this evening, I will quote from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 18, verse 13. What do you think if a shepherd has 100 sheep and one of them has gone astray? Does he not leave the 99 on the mountains and go in search of the one that went astray? And similarly to last week, we can explore it on the basis of colors, but it's also, is there something that you feel about the painting when you look at it? What comes to your mind? Does it move you anyway?
I just relate to the sheep. It's, okay, Lord, how did I get myself in here? And I know I can't get out of here. And so please help me. And the lengths to which Jesus went to get lost sheep like me out of the predicaments they get themselves into.
Yes.
Yeah, the painting really shows how much Jesus loves the lost sheep. He's willing to go up a mountain like that for them.
There's nothing too dangerous for him to pull us out of our...
Right.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I like how probably no regular shepherd would go get that sheep. It probably would be lost forever. And I also like how you commented earlier how the sheep is below the shepherd. He's reaching down to pull us up. He wasn't a sheep that was above. He's pulling us out, pulling us, from the depths of our sins.
Yes. Yes, so Jesus Christ is in the figure of the shepherd.
Yeah, I was just thinking, how ridiculous it is to leave the 99 and to go for one, when there could be wolves and there could be all kinds of complexity for the 99. But it's just that beauty of God's way, that God would, because they're trying to tell us, of course, how extravagant God's love is and God's care for us. So you leave your whole group of sheep to go after one. So it's a beautiful way to think of our own kind of way to be loved.
Yes. Yeah, we are all special. We are all worthwhile saving. I think so too, yes. Oh yeah, and I like this kind of triangular relationship here as well. So it's the sheep who's in a very precarious situation on the cliff and in grave danger to falling into the abyss. And there is the bird of prey, the sin, destruction, all of it, just waiting for us to fall and then to pull us even further into our misery. So I thought it's a beautiful triangular relation. And then there's Jesus Christ, there's God wanting to help us, to pull us out of this situation. And going to the extra mile, as Father Mann said, the shepherd himself is clinging to the edge of the mountain, barely by his fingertips. And he doesn't have very good footing. If you see here, his knee is just leaning against the rock there. If that little bit of the rock will give way, the shepherd would fall into the abyss himself. So yeah, it's a beautiful depiction of that how much we can rely on the love of God, that He will pull us, hopefully, or He will come to our rescue. Mary, over there.
To me, it looks like good and evil, and you already know that good won because the bird is fleeing. To me, it looks like the bird of prey is headed off. Like he knows he can't win this because God is there, and the sheep looks up like, you got me. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah. Yeah, yes.
When you hear the story in the Bible, it's the message is that the sheep is simply lost. But this is a lot more than that. It's like others have said, sheep is on in the danger of falling and so forth. And I never thought of it that way before. That it's God pulling us up out of the depths,
yes.
like she said.
Yes, yeah. And it's almost, it can be anything, whatever we do, how far we walk away from God, He will try to pull us back. It might be the little things, but it will be the big things that He will come for us and save us. The bird of prey, I thought it was very interesting. It could be flying away, but it also could be there to distract and to play in His favor. I kind of was thinking about that as well. It's because it doesn't take much, so that the sheep is concentrating on the shepherd, but it doesn't take much for it to be distracted and then fall forever and being lost forever. So I think the bird of prey plays a very precarious role in this painting. And I think a second layer of interpretation of this painting could be that we are also called to be shepherds. Of course, we should rely on Jesus Christ to be our shepherd and help us through our lives. But I think we are also called to be shepherds. So we are the shepherds of our children. We are the shepherds of our family members. We are shepherds in our jobs as nurses and doctors, to lead people to a good life and proclaim our belief to everyone else around us. So yeah, and we're coming to the end of this. This was one of Seward's most famous paintings that he had created, and it was particularly well known in the UK and also in the US, and it was around the beginning of the turn of the century. It was reproduced something like 300,000 times. So it was a quite popular work of art at that time. And so I will conclude this evening with the following question: who do we pay attention to, Jesus Christ or the devil? And thank you again for coming, and thank you for participating.